I don't know how to feel about this. I mean, I know my initial reaction. The question is, would you eat meat that was grown in a laboratory? Now, I'm not talking about alternative meats, Beyond Meat. I'm not talking about the Impossible Burger. I'm talking about cultivated meat. And this is a real thing that's happening in the United States. It's happening in a couple other countries. The UK just made it legal for pet food. It's real meat, but it's grown from cells of the animal in a laboratory. And I don't know much about this other than it's crazy. Like, what year are we living in? Are we living in the future? Feel free to comment and engage on this one. I want to learn a little bit more about how they do this and really what this is. There is no other choice, perhaps. It's just cells grown. Yeah, it's just cells. It's actual cells. It's real cells. It's real meat, but it didn't come from the animal. Like, my mind is exploding with how this is even possible. Let's listen to this.
From the poor treatment of animals to uneven food distribution and even climate change, lab-grown food is being hailed by some as a solution for many of today's biggest issues. Our global agricultural system is responsible for over a quarter of all greenhouse gas emissions.
Whoa, look at that. Okay, so now that's something that most people don't really think about. Greenhouse gas emissions, right? The ecosystem, like, it's all important. And I had no idea that beef and food was at the top of this. From a human longevity perspective, okay, maybe that makes sense. And that's something that I didn't consider. Maybe I need to think about.
Among the worst offenders are beef, dark chocolate, coffee, and fish.
Coffee, no!
Per kilogram.
There has been a lot of hype around cell-cultivated food, but how viable is the industry? What does it entail? And more importantly, will consumers bite?
Can you do the honours and lift the lid on your creation?
Over a decade ago on The Edge, we reported on the world's first ever cultured beef burger, unveiled by Professor Mark Post from Maastricht University.
2013.
It cost around €250,000 to produce. He went on to set up Mosa Meat, a company which...
I had no idea this has been around since 2013.
And he's not alone. There are now hundreds of startups developing their own lab-grown products. But just how do they do it? It's a relatively simple procedure, and similar for both meat and plant-based production.
Right, simple.
Meat simply take stem cells from animals' tissue, add a nutrient-rich solution, and watch the cells multiply into the three main components of meat: muscle, fat, and connective tissue.
You can literally remove the stem cells from any animal, chicken, beef, pigs, whatever you want, fish, whatever you want, and you can place them in a solution in a petri dish, add a few things, and it literally grows into meat. What? How did people figure this out? This is insanity.
Then put the cells into bioreactors, or as they're more commonly known, cultivators. These cells are then separated and rearranged to build a final edible product. This part of the process is called scaffolding and can be very complicated. A steak, for instance, needs a lot more scaffolding than ground meat in a burger. The entire process takes between 2 and 8 weeks.
What does that mean?
The payoff can be huge. It's estimated that just 1,000th of a pound of cow cells can create up to 4.4 billion pounds of beef.
That's incredible. That is insane. Think about the possibilities of world hunger, things like that. I mean, that's a huge number. Science is amazing. Science is absolutely amazing.
That sounds like an impressive return. So what's the holdup?
Well, cost is a big issue. Currently, lab-grown meat is around 40% more expensive than animal meat. And then there's health and safety concerns. All production must happen in a completely sterile environment because the cells have no natural immunity from diseases. And while traditional meat is nutritionally dense, most of its proteins, vitamins, and minerals are introduced via animal feed. You have to add these nutrients into cultured meat, and it's still unclear whether today's additives provide equal nutritional value in the long term. As a result, regulators can't seem to align on the technology. Singapore became the first country in the world to approve cultured meat for human consumption.
Look at that, 2020.
The US followed suit 3 years later, and the UK's Food Standards Agency approved use for pet food in early
I just read that.
2004. Italy, meanwhile, has banned the production, sale, and import of lab-grown meat entirely, with the government citing its potential negative impact on the country's farming industry.
Okay. So now it's hard to say if the motivation behind banning something like this is going to be economical, morals, is it going to be political? Italy, I know, is super careful about their food ingredients, exactly what goes into their food. They're very particular about that. I know France is too. I did not know that the US was already doing this. I haven't been in the US for 2 years now. Can you buy cultivated meat? Can you go to like Costco or like the regular grocery store and find cultivated meat? And if you can, would you buy it? I guess it's 40% more.
France and Romania might do the same. The EU so far has not offered any guidance, but if it does greenlight use, it could put Brussels on a collision course with angry farmers.
Some critics are calling for more research into the environmental impacts of cultured food, especially if production is ramped up significantly. After all, the manufacturing process still requires an energy source, but those championing the industry believe the benefits outweigh the negatives.
So that reminds me of the same argument that Tesla and other electric car manufacturers had, where it's this great idea, electric vehicles, and then people say, well, how much is the energy? How much energy does it take to build these things? It's a huge amount, and I'm guessing that's kind of similar to this, but that doesn't mean it's not a good idea. That doesn't mean they can't scale the industry in the future and figure out better ways for efficiency in manufacturing. They can't figure out ways to get it cheaper. I don't know. What my concern is the health implications. I understand that it's real meat, but it's not from a real animal. And I feel like we're playing God. We're messing with nature in ways that we never have before. And it's a little concerning and a little frightening. I mean, I guess there's no difference between regular meat that you would get from a cow and this. I guess there's not, except for the additives that you would put into it.
They say cultured food has the potential to dramatically reduce food waste, tantalize our taste buds with things we've never traditionally eaten, and could provide health benefits by tailoring food to nutritional needs, such as removing gluten or saturated fats without compromising on the taste. According to consulting firm McKinsey, cultivated meat could make up as much as 0.5% of the world's meat supply by 2030, making it a $25 billion global industry.
That's crazy. This is so interesting because this is happening now. Cultivated meat in the US, do they have to label it? They must. They must be required to label cultivated meat. It's in very, very tiny font. That's crazy. So you could accidentally buy cultivated meat, but you would never know. Fascinating. We'll have to stay up to date with this and see what goes on with cultivated meat. You may be finding it in a grocery store down the street.